For more than 60 years, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman built reputations as two of Hollywood's toughest and most respected actors. They shared the screen in the Oscar-winning Unforgiven, creating performances that became part of movie history. But behind the cameras, they were very different men. One continued directing and acting well into his 90s. The other quietly walked away from Hollywood without looking back. So, what did Clint Eastwood really think of Gene Hackman? And why did Hackman choose a life of complete privacy after becoming one of cinema's greatest legends? The answers reveal a story few fans fully understand. Long before they stood together on the dusty streets of Unforgiven, long before they earned the respect of millions of movie lovers, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman were simply two young men chasing dreams that seemed almost impossible. Neither one was born into Hollywood. Neither had powerful connections, and neither became a star overnight. In fact, both men spent years hearing the same message: you're not the right fit. For Clint Eastwood, the road began in California during difficult times. His family moved often as his parents searched for work, and he grew up without knowing exactly what his future would be. Before acting, he worked a variety of jobs, including as a lifeguard, grocery clerk, and factory worker. Hollywood wasn't waiting for him. When Eastwood first auditioned, some critics believed he spoke too slowly. Others thought he lacked emotion. He wasn't the polished leading man studios were looking for. But Clint had something more valuable: patience. Instead of giving up, he accepted small television roles and kept learning. Then, in the late 1950s, he landed a role in the TV Western Rawhide. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him experience. More importantly, it gave audiences time to notice him. Everything changed when Italian director Sergio Leone cast him in a low-budget Western that many Hollywood executives believed would fail. That film was a fistful of dollars. It introduced a mysterious man with no name. Quiet, confident, dangerous. Almost overnight, Clint Eastwood became an international star. He proved that sometimes saying less can mean much more. Meanwhile, across the country, another future legend was facing an even tougher road. Gene Hackman grew up in Illinois. His childhood was far from easy. When he was just 13 years old, his father left the family. Years later, Hackman would remember a simple wave goodbye from his father as one of the most painful memories of his life. That moment stayed with him forever. At 16, he lied about his age to join the U.S. Marine Corps. He served for several years before returning home with a new goal. He wanted to become an actor, but Hollywood didn't make it easy. Hackman studied at the Pasadena Playhouse alongside another struggling student named Dustin Hoffman. Ironically, both young men were once voted least likely to succeed. Imagine hearing that while chasing your biggest dream. Many people would have walked away. Hackman didn't. Neither did Hoffman. Instead, they pushed even harder. Hackman accepted small roles in theater and television, working tirelessly to improve his craft. Then came the breakthrough. His performance in Bonnie and Clyde earned him his first Academy Award nomination. Soon after, he won an Oscar for The French Connection, proving every early critic wrong. Unlike many movie stars, Gene Hackman never relied on flashy charm. He became famous because audiences believed every character he played. Heroes, villains, coaches, sheriffs, politicians. He disappeared into every role. That rare ability made him one of Hollywood's most respected actors. Here's something to think about. If someone had told you that you would never succeed at your biggest dream, would you have kept going anyway? Share your answer in the comments. Although Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman built their careers separately, they earned remarkably similar reputations. Both were professionals. Both valued hard work over celebrity. Both preferred letting their performances speak louder than interviews. By the late 1980s, they had become two of the most respected names in American cinema. Fans had often imagined seeing them together, but it hadn't happened. Not yet. Then, in the early 1990s, one extraordinary script landed on Clint Eastwood's desk. It wasn't just another Western. It was a story about aging, regret, violence, and the true cost of revenge. Eastwood knew immediately that one role required an actor with incredible depth. There was one name that stood above all the others: Gene Hackman. Neither man realized it then, but that decision would create one of the greatest westerns ever made, and a partnership built on deep professional respect. By the early 1990s, westerns were no longer dominating Hollywood. Many studios believed the genre had run its course. Audiences wanted action blockbusters, thrillers, and big special effects. A quiet, thoughtful western about aging gunfighters didn't sound like a guaranteed success. But Clint Eastwood saw something different. He had first read the script for Unforgiven years earlier and believed it was unlike any western he had ever made. Instead of celebrating violence, the story questioned it. Instead of portraying heroes as fearless legends, it showed them as flawed, aging people carrying the weight of their past. Eastwood knew the film would only work if every performance felt completely authentic. One character stood above the rest. Sheriff Little Bill Daggett. Little Bill wasn't a simple villain. He believed he was keeping order. He had charm. He had humor. But he could also be frighteningly ruthless. Finding the right actor would determine whether the movie succeeded or failed. For Clint, the choice became clear. Gene Hackman. Hackman had already earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's finest actors. He didn't just play characters. He became them. Whether portraying a determined detective, a military officer, or a ruthless politician, audiences believed every word. Eastwood later spoke with admiration about Hackman's talent and professionalism, describing him as an actor who always brought intelligence and depth to every role. When Hackman accepted the part, two Hollywood legends finally found themselves working side by side. But despite their fame, the atmosphere on set wasn't driven by ego. It was driven by respect. Eastwood directed with a calm, efficient style. He was known for keeping the set quiet. He rarely demanded endless retakes. He trusted his actors. Hackman appreciated that approach. Instead of competing for attention, both men focused on telling the best story possible. Their different personalities actually complemented each other. Eastwood was famously reserved. He often said more with silence than with words. Hackman, meanwhile, brought powerful emotional energy to every scene. When the cameras rolled, that contrast created something unforgettable. One of the film's most memorable moments comes near the end, when William Money, played by Eastwood, walks into the saloon after learning of his friend's death. Standing in his way is Little Bill. The confrontation is tense. There are no flashy speeches, no exaggerated action, just two extraordinary actors creating suspense through expression, timing, and quiet confidence. The audience could feel decades of experience in every glance. Neither man needed to prove he was a star. Their performances did that for them. Think about this. Sometimes the greatest partnerships aren't built on being the same. They're built on bringing different strengths together. Which do you think is more important, natural talent or years of hard work? Let us know in the comments. When Unforgiven was released in 1992, critics immediately recognized its brilliance. The film wasn't simply another Western. It redefined the genre. It showed violence as painful rather than glamorous. It explored guilt instead of glory. And it reminded audiences that legends grow older too. The Academy agreed. Unforgiven won Best Picture. Clint Eastwood received his first Best Director Oscar. Gene Hackman won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his unforgettable portrayal of Little Bill Daggett. It was one of the greatest achievements of both men's careers. Yet, what many people remember most isn't the awards. It's the respect they earned from each other. Over the years, Eastwood has consistently spoken highly of Hackman's abilities, praising his commitment, preparation, and remarkable range as an actor. There was no dramatic feud, no hidden rivalry, just two professionals at the top of their craft creating a film that would stand the test of time. But after reaching the highest level of success, their paths began to move in very different directions. Clint Eastwood kept directing, kept acting, kept surprising audiences well into his later years. Gene Hackman made a decision that shocked Hollywood. He quietly stepped away from the spotlight and rarely looked back. The reason behind that choice became one of the biggest mysteries of his remarkable career. If you enjoy uncovering the true stories behind Hollywood's greatest legends, subscribe now. In the next chapter, we'll explore what Clint Eastwood has actually said about Gene Hackman and why his words reveal the deep respect between two of cinema's greatest icons. Hollywood has always loved stories about rivalries. The media often asks the same questions. Did the stars get along? Was there tension behind the cameras? Did success create competition? But when it came to Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman, the real story was much simpler. It was built on respect, not rivalry. After working together on Unforgiven, Eastwood consistently spoke highly of Hackman's talent. He admired Hackman's ability to make every character feel believable, no matter how large or small the role. That praise wasn't unusual. Many of the industry's greatest actors shared the same opinion. Gene Hackman had earned a reputation as what actors call an actor's actor, someone whose work was admired just as much by fellow performers as it was by audiences. What made Hackman different? He never relied on flashy performances. He rarely tried to steal a scene. Instead, he focused on making every moment feel authentic. Whether he was playing a hero, a villain, or someone caught somewhere in between, viewers believed him. Clint Eastwood understood exactly how difficult that was. As both an actor and director, he knew that the strongest performances often looked effortless, even though they required incredible skill. During the making of Unforgiven, Eastwood directed with his well-known philosophy: keep the set calm, avoid unnecessary retakes, trust the actors. Hackman thrived in that environment. Instead of being told exactly how to perform each scene, he was given room to explore the character naturally. That trust showed on screen. Their scenes together never felt like two movie stars competing. They felt like two real men whose lives had brought them to the same dangerous moment. Perhaps that's why the film still feels timeless. Neither Eastwood nor Hackman tried to outshine the other. They served the story. And when actors do that, everyone wins. Here's something to think about. Have you ever noticed that the greatest teams aren't always made up of people trying to be the loudest? Sometimes success comes from trusting each other. Tell us what you think in the comments. Over the years, Eastwood has also spoken about the importance of professionalism. Hackman represented exactly that. He arrived prepared. He respected the crew. He treated acting as a craft rather than a celebrity lifestyle. Those qualities earned him admiration throughout Hollywood. In fact, many directors have said that working with Hackman meant working with someone who was completely committed to the role from the moment filming began. Yet despite all the awards, the critical praise, and the unforgettable performances, Gene Hackman made a choice that surprised almost everyone. He walked away. No farewell tour. No emotional press conference. No attempt to stay in the spotlight. He simply retired from acting and chose a quieter life. For fans, it was difficult to understand. Why would someone at the top of the industry leave it behind? The answer wasn't about losing his love for acting. It was about gaining something he valued even more: a peaceful life away from constant attention. That decision will become one of the most fascinating final chapters in Hollywood history. And it revealed something about Gene Hackman that audiences had rarely seen behind the camera. Many people spend their lives chasing fame. Gene Hackman reached the very top and then chose privacy instead. In our next chapter, we'll explore why he made that remarkable decision, how he spent his retirement, and why his quiet exit may have been one of the boldest choices of his entire career. For most actors, retirement is difficult. After years of applause, cameras, and movie premieres, stepping away from the spotlight can feel impossible. Many return again and again. One more film, one more interview, one more chance to relive the excitement. But Gene Hackman chose a different path. After decades of unforgettable performances, he quietly walked away from Hollywood. No dramatic announcement, no farewell tour, just a decision that surprised fans around the world. At first, many people assumed he would return. After all, he was one of the most respected actors of his generation. He had won 2 Academy Awards, appeared in more than 80 films, and worked with many of the greatest directors in cinema history. Why would someone leave at the height of such an extraordinary career? The answer wasn't a single event. It was a combination of personal priorities. In later interviews, Hackman explained that filmmaking had become physically demanding and he wanted a slower, quieter life. He also spoke about advice from his doctor regarding stress, which encouraged him to think seriously about stepping away from the constant pressures of movie production. Rather than seeing retirement as giving something up, he saw it as gaining something. Time, peace, privacy. He moved away from Hollywood and settled in New Mexico, where he lived a much more private life with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. Instead of film sets, he spent time reading, cycling, writing novels. Yes, writing. Many fans were surprised to learn that Hackman began a second creative career as an author. He co-wrote historical novels before later publishing several novels under his own name, proving that his passion for storytelling never disappeared. It simply found a different form. That decision reflected who Gene Hackman had always been. He wasn't driven by celebrity. He was driven by the work itself. When acting no longer fit the life he wanted, he found another way to create. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood made the opposite choice. Even into his 90s, Eastwood continued directing and producing films, showing an incredible passion for filmmaking that never seemed to fade. Two legendary actors, two extraordinary careers, two completely different endings. Neither path was right or wrong. They simply reflected different priorities. Think about this. If you achieved everything you ever dreamed of in your career, would you keep working because you loved it, or would you step away to enjoy a quieter life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Gene Hackman's retirement also added to his mystique, because he rarely gave interviews, rarely appeared in public, and stayed away from social media. Every rare photograph or public sighting attracted enormous attention. Fans remained curious, not because he was seeking publicity, but because he wasn't. In a world where many celebrities constantly share their lives online, Hackman's silence became part of his legacy. It reminded people that fame doesn't have to last forever. Sometimes, walking away is its own kind of success. As the years passed, admiration for Hackman only grew stronger. His performances continued to inspire new generations of actors. Film schools studied his work. Directors praised his realism. Audiences rediscovered his classics. His influence never disappeared. It simply lived on to the characters he created. But perhaps the most remarkable part of his story isn't that he became one of Hollywood's greatest actors. It's that he knew when he had accomplished what he wanted, and he was comfortable letting the work speak for itself. In our final chapter, we'll explore how Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman, despite choosing very different paths later in life, left behind two of the greatest legacies in movie history, and why their influence continues to shape Hollywood today. Hollywood has seen thousands of actors, hundreds of stars, but only a handful become true legends. Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman earned that title in very different ways. One never stopped creating. The other knew exactly when it was time to leave. Yet both changed American cinema forever. Clint Eastwood continued directing and acting well into his 90s, proving that age doesn't have to limit creativity. With films like $1 Million Baby, Gran Torino, American Sniper, and many others, he built one of the most remarkable directing careers in Hollywood history. Gene Hackman chose another path. After retiring, he stayed away from the spotlight and allowed his body of work to speak for itself. He didn't chase another comeback. He didn't seek attention. Instead, he embraced a quieter life focused on family, writing, and personal peace. That decision only increased the respect many people had for him. Then, in early 2025, heartbreaking news shocked the entertainment world. Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found dead at their home in New Mexico. Authorities later concluded that Hackman, who had advanced Alzheimer's disease and heart disease, died of cardiovascular disease several days after Arakawa died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare illness linked to rodent exposure. Investigators found no evidence of foul play. The news saddened millions. Actors, directors, fans, people from every corner of the film industry paid tribute to a man whose performances had shaped generations of cinema. Among those remembering Hackman was Clint Eastwood. Eastwood released a heartfelt public statement, saying, "There was no finer actor than Gene. Intense and instinctive, never a false note. He was also a dear friend whom I will miss very much." Those few words said more than a long speech ever could. They weren't filled with drama. They weren't designed for headlines. They came from genuine respect between two men who had shared one unforgettable film and a lifetime devoted to their craft. Perhaps that's the real truth people have been searching for. Not a hidden secret, not a shocking confession, but a lasting friendship built on admiration and professionalism. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about conflict. They're about respect. Here's one final question. Which Gene Hackman performance will you remember forever? Was it The French Connection, Hoosiers, Mississippi Burning, Crimson Tide, The Conversation, Unforgiven, or another classic? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoy discovering the true stories behind Hollywood's greatest legends, subscribe now. Every week, we uncover the remarkable lives, hidden struggles, and unforgettable legacies of the actors and filmmakers who changed cinema forever. And don't miss our next documentary. We'll reveal the untold story of another legendary Hollywood icon whose greatest battle happened far away from the movie cameras, and whose legacy continues to inspire millions today. In the end, awards fade, box office records are broken, new stars rise, but true greatness never disappears. It lives on through unforgettable performances, the respect of fellow artists, and the memories left behind for generations of movie lovers.